What's up, guys? I'm going to talk to you today about Topshot. I keep getting asked the same couple questions. What is Topshot? Why should I use it? And how much should I use? Very simple. I'm going to show you on the 50, right? So the 50, if you can tell, is about half spooled. It is half spooled with 120-pound braid right there. That is my main line, right? Braid is fantastic in the fact that it's super tiny, meaning thin diameter. You can pack a whole lot more on there, and it's very strong. It's great for fighting them big fish. It's great for having them do them long runs. The problem with braid, it is not abrasion resistant. So if this, and it does sink, sinks down and happens to hit any kind of structure, if it hits the sandbar, if something, while this is under tension, swims into it, like the shark or another shark that you're not fighting because they swim with their mouth open, or a mackerel or something like that swims into this under tension, it will pop. You will lose everything ahead of it, right? So what we do is you have a main line, preferably at least 500 to 600 yards of main line, probably more if you have a bigger reel. This is a 50 narrow, so this is on the smaller side of shark fishing. But we top it off, Topshot, with heavy mono. Now this is only 120 pounds. I just happen to like this because it's a little bit thinner, so I can pack more of it on my 50. But what I do is I FG knot the braid to the mono, and I fill the rest of the spool up with monofilament. Why do I do that, right? I do that because monofilament is abrasion resistant. So with this thing soaking in the water, if anything runs into it, if the shark decides to tail whip it, if it hits a sandbar structure, anything like that, this stands a much better chance of taking the hit and keeping the fish on and not breaking off than braided line, right? So how much should I use? Okay, I personally think that you only need a Topshot just a little bit longer than the length of your drop. So being that it's a 50, and that we have a sandbar that's relatively close, about 120 yards out, I don't want to take away too much of my line capacity of braid, so I only put 200 yards of mono on there. I do that because I only drop just beyond the sandbar. I typically drop about 150 yards out. I can get away with that because, again, the sandbar's right here. That's where all the big fish are cruising along. I go just beyond the sandbar and I'm great. So if I put 200 yards of mono on here, when I kayak that bait out, the only thing sitting in the water waiting to get picked up is monofilament. That's great because, again, monofilament is abrasion resistant. So while this is sitting there, it's not the braid, getting sloshed around in the waves, slowly getting deteriorated by salt water, hitting in the sun, sunk down to the bottom with seaweed and crabs and all that other stuff sitting on there. It's monofilament, which stands a much better chance of, long time resistance against stuff. Hang on. Right. So your Topshot should be about the length or longer than the amount you drop. So if you have a 80 wide or a 130 or anything bigger than that, you can put on there more Topshot. But I would always put on there at least the length of your drop. So if you do 300-yard drops, put at least 300 yards. If you do 400, do 400. If you do 200-yard drops and you have an 80 wide and you still would like to put longer mono, hey, more is fine. And with that being said, here's a great example. Here is my 12-aught Senator that I just rarely fish anymore because I love the 50 so much. This does not have an inch of braid on it. This is 1,000 yards of monofilament. I believe this is 150. Why? Because I have the line capacity. I don't need to put braid on here because there's enough room to fill it with mono, right? Braid plays a very important role when you're trying to get line capacity. In shark fishing, especially from shore, line capacity is the name of the game. So if you have a smaller reel, you take advantage of braid being thinner, you can fit more on there. But you take advantage of your Topshot of your mono to protect your main line. All right? Again, 200 yards is good for me. You can base that on the size of your reel, and you can base that on the length of the drop that you typically do. I count my yardage going out by paddles. So I typically paddle out 150 paddles, and I say that's about 150 yards. It's not an exact science. The next time you go to drop a bait, I would recommend counting your paddles, and then for every paddle, because you get a good rhythm going. When you paddle, it kind of pushes you about 3 feet, which is a yard. So count the next time you go out about how many paddles you have, and then check to see the length of your top shot. When I get done and I get back to my reel, I can pretty much see the end of my top shot on my reel if I went far enough and have a little bit left of my reel. If I went a little too far, I can see the connection point between the braid and the mono going down the beach, meaning, I went a little bit further, I went about 200 and some yards, and I got the connection point hanging off. That's still fine. I'm not saying you can't have braid in the water. A lot of people do, and it works out fine. I'm just saying you stand a much better chance of not being cut off if the only thing you have soaking is monofilament. All right? If you found this helpful, give it a like. If you want to see something else, if you have another question, shoot me a message, put it in the comment, let me know. I actually like doing these videos. I think these are kind of cool. I am by no means an expert, but I like sharing the knowledge with people who are interested in getting into shark fishing or have been doing it for a while and just want to maybe learn something new, right? See you on the beach.